Hello everyone and welcome to another Commander Tactics Deck Tech. My name's Pope. In today's Deck Tech, we're going to dive into the land of green and red to build around the latest Gruul commander, and that is Klothys, God of Destiny. This brand new legendary enchantment creature has major flexibility with always useful abilities. For one generic, a red and a green, Klothys has indestructible, and as long as our devotion to red and green is less than 7, Klothys isn't a creature. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, we're going to exile a target card from a graveyard. If it is a land card, we're going to add a green or a red mana to our mana pool. Otherwise, we're going to gain 2 life and deal 2 damage to each opponent. Klothys is the type of commander built to enable just about any strategy of your choosing and falls under a different category of commander than what most decks are built around. See, Klothys at the helm means our deck can function at 100% with or without her on the field. This is not the case for most decks and will help us have the edge on the competition. So with so many options to choose from, we put together 2 of our favorites to form one sweet creation. Part 1 of the deck is an elf ball strategy, set up to provide us with tons of mana and tons of bodies on the board. This will allow us to quickly get into the second phase of the deck, and that is all the X spells that our heart can imagine. With so much mana at our fingertips, the boost from Klothys, we are going to be dropping huge X value spells to deal damage, create tons of tokens, and overwhelm our opponents with one swift punch. In combination, each spell we cast is going to devastate our opponents and get us more wins. And keeping things kind on our wallets, this whole deck is going to cost us less than $100. A quick note before we dive in, if you know someone who might be just getting into Commander and is looking for a deck to begin learning the format, I think this deck would be an amazing fit. There aren't too many mechanics to overwhelm them, and the consistency of our ramp along with the card draw will make it easy to keep things moving along. But have no fear, if you are a seasoned player, this deck can be very explosive and can outright kill multiple opponents on turns 5 or 6. But now, let's get the ball rolling and take a look at all the elf spells we have to give us all the mana we need, starting things off with Llanowar Elves, Elvish Mystic, and Fyndhorn Elves. Each of these creatures are the essence of all that is elves. For only 1 green, each of them are going to enter the battlefield, and then they can be tapped to give us a green in our mana pool. So simple, yet so satisfying. Next up, we have Priest of Titania and Elvish Archdruid. For only 1 and a green, Priest of Titania can be tapped to add a green for each elf on the battlefield. This includes our opponents, so make sure you are not missing out on some free mana when you use the Priest. An Elvish Archdruid is an elf lord giving all of our other elves +1/+1, and also can be tapped to add a green for each elf under our control. Both of these elves are going to ramp us even harder and could enable us to reach 7 or 8 mana by turn 3. With all the mana generating elves we will be tapping down, we want to make sure that we get the most out of them, and that's why we're also going to be running spells like Leyline of Abundance, Harvest Season, and Throne of the God Pharaoh. Leyline of Abundance getting its first printing as a brand new Leyline in Core 20. If you have it in your opening hand, you get to start with it on the field, which is a huge upgrade for this deck. It says whenever you tap a creature for mana, add an additional green. So our Llanowar Elves, our Elvish Mystics, they're going to be tapping for double green, getting us to tons of mana so fast. And then if we have some mana that we need to just dump, we can pay 8 mana, 6 and 2 green to put a +1 counter on every one of our creatures. I've been looking for a home for Leyline of Abundance, and this is it. Harvest Season, 2 and a green, a sorcery, gonna let us search our library for X basic lands, where X is the number of tapped creatures we control, and we get to put those lands straight onto the battlefield. While most decks would be assuming tapped creatures are attacking, ours are going to be generating mana, which in turn are going to make Harvest Season so strong. And Throne of the God Pharaoh, legendary artifact for only 2 mana. At the beginning of our end step, each opponent is going to lose life equal to the number of tapped creatures we control. Throne of the God Pharaoh in conjunction with Klothys doing 2 damage every turn can really rack up some points quick. Next up, we have 3 multicolored elf friends with Mina and Den Wildborn, Bloodbraid Elf, and Radha, Heir of Keld. Mina and Den, Wildborn, super strong legendary elf ally. You may play an additional land on each of your turns, super strong. Then for 2 mana, a red and a green, we can return a land to our hand. And if we do, we can give a target creature trample until the end of turn. Do keep in mind, we can activate Mina and Den's ability at any point, so if we have combat damage with trample about to get through, we can activate it and catch our opponents off guard. Bloodbraid Elf, a classic, has haste and has cascade, so whenever we cast this spell, we're going to exile cards from the top of our library until we exile a non-land card that costs less, and then we can cast that card for free. Bloodbraid Elf has gotten many printings, but still an extremely great card. And Rada Erdekeld, a legendary elf warrior. Whenever it attacks, we can add double red to our mana pool, and then we can tap it to add green as well. All 3 of these elves going to bring something different to the table, but make our elf power so much better. And rounding out the team, we have a few supporting elves with Beast Whisperer, Fierce Empath, and Reclamation Sage. Beast Whisperer going to give us some card draw whenever we cast any creature spell. Fierce Empath, whenever it enters the battlefield, we're going to get to tutor up a mana cost 6 or greater creature card, put it straight into our hand. And Reclamation Sage going to allow us to deal with those pesky artifacts or enchantments whenever it enters. With this deck running over 30 different creatures, there were just too many elves to cover, so make sure you do go check out the deck tech linked below to see the rest of the elves that we did not mention. But now let's get to the spiciest portion of this deck, and that is all the massive X spells that we're going to be able to cast thanks to all the mana we're going to be generating. Kicking things off with the Gelatinous Genesis and Stone Coil Serpent. Gelatinous Genesis may be a card you've never seen because I hadn't seen it till I was building this deck, but it says for X, X, and green, we get to put X, X, X green ooze creature tokens onto the battlefield. This means if we can dump 5 or 6 into X for 11 or 13 mana, we're going to create that many of those oozes. This can create a huge army for only a ton of mana. And Stone Coil Serpent, X cost, has reach, has trample, protection from multicolored, and enters with X +1 counters. Having Stone Coil on board early as a 6/6 to protect us against any annoying creatures our opponents might have made this such a powerful card in the deck. Next up, we have widespread damage with all of our red X spells: Comet Storm, Fall of the Titans, Bonfire of the Damned. Comet Storm for X red has multi-kickers, so we have to pay 1 for each target beyond the first one, but it says choose target creature or player, so this can target players. Then choose another target or player for each time it was kicked. Comet Storm is going to deal X damage to each of them. Good chance if we draw Comet Storm late game, we have all of our opponents low, we can multi-kick this and just win outright. Fall of the Titans is going to be a little more expensive for X red, but it does have a surge cost, so if we played a spell before we cast this, we only have to pay X and red. And it says Fall of the Titans deals X damage to each of up to 2 target creatures, and again, and or players. These X spells being able to target players is really what makes them so strong for us. They are just game finishers. And Bonfire of the Damned, double X and red. Bonfire of the Damned is going to deal X damage to target player and each creature he or she controls. And if it is the first card that we drew this turn, we can cast it for its miracle cost of only 1X. Just do make sure that your opponent does not have Narset's Reversal in hand, because that will end poorly. Next up, we have 2 golden X spells with Reap the Past and Clan Defiance. Reap the Past for X red green. We get to return X cards at random from our graveyard to our hand. Late game, there's a good chance we can put so much into X that we are going to get our entire graveyard back. And Clan Defiance for X red green, we can choose 1 or more, so we can choose all of them. But we're going to get to deal X damage to a creature with flying, deal X damage to a creature without flying, and deal X damage to any target player. Flexible cards like this are very important, and I think really take decks to a new level. And lastly, the silver bullet for our X spells, Unbound Flourishing. Unbound Flourishing, an enchantment for 2 and a green, coming straight from Modern Horizons. Such an amazing set. Says whenever you cast a permanent spell with a mana cost containing X, you get double the X value. So our Stonecoil Serpent is going to be massive. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell or activate an ability, if that spell's mana cost or that ability's activation cost contains X, we get to copy the spell or ability, and then we can choose new targets for the copy. If we go one turn with Unbound Flourishing on the board and we can cast a large red X spell, there is a good chance that we are just ending the game on the spot. While this card was definitely designed to support Hydras, it goes so perfect in this deck. But now let's take a look at the spells and strategies that we're going to be using to round games out and bring us home the win. Starting things off with Overrun, Overwhelming Stampede, and End-Raise Forerunner. Each of these spells are going to pump our team and give them trample, enabling us to overrun our opponents with all of our mana dorks that we've created and all of the elves that we have in play. Overrun gives all of our creatures +3/+3 and trample until the end of turn for 5 mana. Overwhelming Stampede, same thing for 5 mana, but it gives all of our creatures +X/+X, where X is the greatest power among creatures we control. There's a good chance our power is going to be greater than 3, so Overwhelming Stampede, just a better overrun. And End-Raise Forerunner, Vigilance, Trample, Haste on a creature, 7/7 for 8 mana. When End-Raise Forerunner enters the battlefield, other creatures you control are going to get +2/+2, gain Vigilance, and gain Trample. If our board is wide, be looking for these spells to help us close games out. But there is one spell better than all of these, and that is Beastmaster Ascension. Beastmaster Ascension for 3 mana. This enchantment says whenever a creature you control attacks, we're going to put a quest counter on it. And as long as Beastmaster Ascension has 7 or more quest counters on it, all of our creatures are going to get +5/+5. Getting Beastmaster Ascension out early, start building quest counters up. This will absolutely be trouble for your opponents and help us to have humongous elves ready to crash in. But maybe the board is a mess and we haven't been able to keep all of our creatures. We're going to kill all of our opponents by dumping all of our mana into our huge X spells like Jaya's Immolating Inferno and Earthquake. Jaya's Immolating Inferno for X, a red and a red. It is a legendary sorcery, so we will have to have a legendary in play to cast it. But it is going to let us deal X damage to each of up to 3 targets. And wouldn't you know it, in most games, you've got exactly 3 opponents. Jaya's Immolating Inferno is the perfect dagger to really just end games. And Earthquake, similar effect, except it is going to be hitting us. So we're going to pay X and red. Earthquake's going to deal X damage to each creature without flying and each player. So make sure we have a little bit of extra life, and there is life gain added into this deck to make sure we can do this. Then we can cast Earthquake for a bunch, hit everyone, and win the game. This deck is absolutely built to be fast and funky, so look to get that mana into those X's as quick as possible. But now that we've seen most of the Gruul goodness, let's take a look at what else we're running inside the 99. Our removal and control in this deck is great with all the big red damage that we're going to be doing across the board, can take care of any targets. Our card draw and advantage, also phenomenal. We've got 12 spells in here, going to let us keep our hand going. Our ramp, well, unprecedented, as we are running tons of mana dorks, and we're in green, going to help us get all those lands out. And the power level of this deck, I put at a 5.5. You could absolutely soup this deck up with some way more powerful elves and way bigger X spells, but for this, it is very straightforward, but still has potential to just go off. And then of course, winning with this deck, there's a few ways we can do it, already covered earlier, but we got Throne of the God Pharaoh and Klothys. This is going to be the slow grind in case we get one of those long games. They're going to help us drain our opponents. Beastmaster's Ascension, Overrun, Overwhelming Stampede. We're going to make our board wide, go in for monster attacks, and then if that doesn't do it, we're going to dump all of our mana into a huge X spell like Immolating Inferno and just deal a ton of damage to our opponent's faces. A few budget alternatives we could cycle into this deck: Karametra's Acolyte, Dwynen Guiltleaf Dane, and Well-Wisher. Each of these is going to offer us more ramp and more life gain to be able to dump our mana into the big X spells faster and safer. I have been getting requests to suggest what cards to put them in for this deck. I would possibly take out Vanquisher's Banner and Cryptolith Rite to put these in, and then find something else, maybe just a land for the last spot. A few upgrades to really make this deck just boom: Kindred Summons, the Great Henge, and the Hoof himself, Craterhoof Behemoth. Kindred Summons instant, gonna let us choose a creature type and reveal cards from the top of our library until we reveal X creature cards as a chosen type, where X is equal to the number of those that we already control, and then we get to put them straight into the battlefield. Great Henge, what is there to say? Incredible legendary artifact from Throne of Eldraine. Gonna give us ramp, gonna give us card draw, gonna give us life gain, does it all. And of course, the Hoof. If you're not familiar with this, you're living under a rock. Craterhoof, whenever it comes in, gonna have haste, and whenever it enters, all of our creatures gonna gain trample and gain XX until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures that we control. All bombs, but yes, all a little expensive. But that is that. This is the Klothys Gruul Elf Ball X deck. I love that Klothys just opens the door and allows us to do whatever we want. I could see this deck being built a billion different ways. If you have a Klothys deck, let me know down in the comments below. Would love to see how you built it. If you enjoyed this video, hey, make sure you hit that like button. If you're new here, thanks for checking out the channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you want to see more. New deck techs coming your way every Friday. If you're a Twitter user, head on over there, drop us a follow at EDH Tactics. Appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you for the next one.